Hello and welcome to the Reiki Women podcast. My name is Carrie Varela with the Reiki Healing Society, and it's always so wonderful to be joined in this podcast, these episodes with Michaela Daystar of Heartscapes Reiki and Bronwen Logan of Reiki with Bronwen. So welcome everyone today. I just got back from one of the highlights of my life thus far, 12 days. Wandering around Japan and walking in the footsteps of Isu and Mikao and experiencing many different sacred sites of Reiki. And so I'm hopeful to get some pictures together and put a little slideshow together and have another episode where we really go in a little bit with more depth about my trip and my experiences, the things that I think if I got to share it with you, it would be really meaningful to me. And I hope it gives you a little bit of an insight of, the birthplace of Reiki and share some of the beautiful energy I got to experience there. But for this week, we thought we'd focus on this idea of non-attachment. And non-attachment is, really part and parcel of Reiki, because Reiki really comes from Buddhist roots. And non-attachment is a really fundamental key idea within Buddhism. And it comes from this idea that everything is impermanent. This is a fundamental truth in Buddhism. It's, of course, a fundamental truth in life, that life is always changing. There's nothing that we can grasp on or hold on to in this impermanent life. And if we try to grasp onto things, then we can create suffering. And the Buddhist idea around suffering is that we have to learn non-attachment. And by learning non-attachment to this ever-changing impermanent world, we become more one with the flow of our life and we suffer less. And so it's a really beautiful teaching, and I feel very nourished actually by this idea of non-attachment, because I realize after it's been about 6 years since I got pregnant with my first child, and then 5 years of really in the trenches of motherhood. And I got to tell you, it's interesting how much we can cling to these ideas of life and being born and raising our children. It's very easy to get stuck in this feeling of attachment. And for myself, I feel like this trip to Japan gave me a really nice container with which to just let go of all this accumulation of stuff and emotions and feelings that I have been holding on unintentionally inside of myself, just because life happens and life accumulates, and we just have all of this stuff, all of these layers of that covers ourselves, right? And certainly there's been times where I felt like I've been able to let go and just be in the moment, but nevertheless, inside of myself, there's kind of this heavy cloud of just stuff that accumulates through our life or through challenging times in our life. And so, yeah, it just really felt like that was one of the big themes of my trip to Japan, was non-attachment. And, the beauty about getting into a place of non-attachment is that the energy can really flow, and it can flow in a really balanced way. And that's one of the other benefits I feel like I had. It was just that when you really can let go and you're not clinging to anything, those emotions, the thoughts, they can come in and out, but we don't have to attach to them. And it just helps us be more centered with, well, I'll speak for myself. It helped me feel more centered in who I am today, and let go of all the stories of my past, of all of the things that I've been through, and just really be the best person I can be today. And so I've been working on that, and it's been really good. So I'm sure both of you have a lot to say about this idea of non-attachment, so I'd love to pass it over to you and share with us your thoughts on non-attachment.
I can jump in. You know, whenever I've kind of paused and spent the time to look at some area of my life where I was, suffering in some way, stuck on something, really hurting in some way, heartbreaking in some way, fearful, angry, frustrated, jealous. Um, in all of the instances when I've taken the time to look, I can find at the root of that suffering some place where I'm overly attached to something. Um, and being able to see that gives us the opportunity to make choices around it. I don't always choose to work on releasing that attachment. It's not always the right moment. But being aware of the source of that intense feeling of suffering of some sort can be really powerful and gives me much more of a sense of control and power over what I'm experiencing. So for example, if I'm feeling jealous about something, I'll just use a recent example. I have a number of friends who've been traveling recently to Japan, for example, to lots of really cool destinations. And I'm so happy for those friends. Welcome back, Carrie. We're so glad to have you back from your travels. And there's a part of me that's like, oh, I want to go. I want to do it. I really wish I was in a place in my life where I could travel. And I'm just not. And like, it's not happening in the foreseeable future. And so there's, period of time over the last couple of months where, I was feeling that sense of like, oh, but I don't get to. And luckily I noticed it in time and really like before it developed into a real pressure point, right? Like a real pain point, because oftentimes we don't notice that little thing that's dissatisfying us, that's not feeling quite right, and it grows and it grows and then it becomes a pain point. And so I noticed this just kind of niggling feeling of envy, of jealousy around these things. And firstly, that didn't give me space to really celebrate what my friends were experiencing and to be really curious about it and want to cheer them on. And of course, it was giving me this potential point of pain. And so luckily I caught it in time and I really was able to kind of sit with that feeling and go into my practice and work with gratitude and work with joy practices and really move that through. And it's incredible the difference in how we're just perceiving our life that doing something like that can make. Because firstly, I truly was able to step into a place of celebration with you, with other friends who are on those journeys, and curiosity and excitement, which is how I want to be, right? That's how we want to be oriented when our friends are doing amazing stuff, right? We want to be oriented towards celebration for them. And it gave me an opportunity to see that like this season of my life is about building my home base and putting my attention into my home, into my community, into the infrastructure of my home, the energy of my home, my practice, my business, lots of projects that we have going on in my community that are really meaningful and that have long-term benefit to my life. And that those things are not only what I'm needing to focus on now, but they're what I'm wanting to focus on now. They're the things that are actually really lighting me up and giving me joy and interest. And when I really thought about like packing up and getting on a plane and leaving for 2 weeks, there wasn't a like, yeah, I want to do that right now. Right. And so there was an honesty that was able to come in when I was able to let go of that attachment to, oh, I wish that I could. That I was like, actually, I'm really doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm really enjoying it. And my friends are doing amazing things that we all get to benefit from because of the stories and the learning that's going to come back. And, looking at that dynamic, I see it play out over and over again. Again, like I said, basically anywhere that I'm suffering in some way, there's something that I'm holding on to, some expectation that didn't get met, some desire that I have that I haven't achieved, some memory of the way things were that I wish were still the way that they were. As you said in the beginning, Carrie, this resistance to the reality that things are changing all the time. And whatever it is that we're experiencing now will be different. It will change. And if we're attached to the way things are now, then we don't get to really fully experience the way things are going to evolve and change. And so it's one of those concepts that, on the one hand can feel a little elusive, a little confusing, non-attachment. Like it's one of those things that seems a little esoteric, a little difficult to grasp. What does that mean for my actual life? On the other hand, it can seem overly simplistic. Oh, I'm just supposed to not be attached to my feelings and then everything will be fine. you know? um, that's an overly simplistic view, but it's a really powerful place to focus our attention. When we are experiencing some sort of pain point, some sort of pressure in our life, some sense of dissatisfaction, um, that is an incredible place to start asking myself the question, what is it that I'm attached to in this situation? Can I identify it? And then having identified it, am I willing to work on releasing that, not holding it quite so tightly? Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm like, nope, I'm staying with this. I'm gripping this one tightly. I'm holding this one. I'm going to stay in the throes of whatever this feeling is. Maybe it's righteous indignation, and maybe that's feeling kind of good on a given day, right? But I'm aware of it. I'm making choices about it, and maybe a few days down the line, I can start working on releasing my grip on whatever that thing is. So yeah, those are the thoughts and examples that come to mind immediately.
Yeah, I can relate to all of that. Yeah, I mean, if we could just, it's the precepts in so much of all of that, and if we could just say, oh, I'll be the precepts, I'll be them, then yeah, it's exactly the same thing, right? It doesn't work that way. We are what we are. We are complex beings, and we are what we are right in this moment. And an acceptance of that, of what we are in this moment, is a very beautiful thing. And it's actually us just being who we are right now, and not trying to be something else, because the trying is the messing up sometimes, right? So, but more about that. I think it is a complicated subject. What you were just saying then, Michaela, I think that in many ways you're using gratitude as a way of or understanding that gratitude is a way to help you be in the moment, and a way to really, as I said, accept and be a part of all the things that are happening right now for you. And that is the same for all of us. And some of those things are great, some of those things are not great, and it just is what it is. That is what it is. And we can't expect to always be in these exciting moments or whatever. So I think just really allowing ourselves to be who we are right now is the way forward. I noticed both of you use the word grasping, and I've a while ago I read an article, and it was about the emptiness of hands-on healing. And I think that grasping concept really comes into that if we can let go. And when we're doing hands-on healing, we don't do it like this. And there is a reason for this, because everything that we do mirrors everything else, right? So our physicality our mind, let's put it that way, mirrors our physicality. Yep. So if I'm doing this, my mind is also doing this at the same time. So if I'm doing that, then my mind is also doing that. And in that state of openness, I can give, I can receive. I guess I'm just being here without having to expect anything, like you were saying before. So I think just even that idea of how we're working when we work with hands-on healing can at some level infiltrate into us and teach us about what it means to not hold on to things, and what it means to just simply be there together with ourselves and with others. There was a nice little quote actually that I had on that article, and it was, to receive everything, one must open one's hands and give. So it's it has the whole world, that, you know, that shifting, changing world that Carrie mentioned at the beginning is all allowed to be there when we sit with our hands open. And when we sit with our hands open, the other thing that we're mirroring is an open heart. And so if our heart is open, then we can allow that shifting, changing amazingness of this experience to be here right now with us. And you know, that is, as I said, it's gratitude, it's not holding worry or anger, and it is pure love, you know. So it's always beautiful to see when we pick a subject, when you can pick any subject, and we can bring the Reiki precepts into that, and see how we use them as that filter for how we can live a healthy, happy life. Yeah. I was thinking about, you know, we were just talking about before we started, you know, I've been going through a lot of things because my dogs are missing at the moment. And it's not something to smile about, mind you. It is causing me a lot of grief. And they've been gone for 12 days and no one's seen them. So, you know, these are the things that we come across in our life. Life is, you know, it's good things, bad things. It is, right? And how we deal with that. And as I was saying before, I just, you know, of course, there are moments of great suffering and sadness in that. And but there's also moments of understanding that sitting in the suffering and sadness is not actually going to help me, and it's not going to help the dogs, and it's not going to help the situation in any way. So, you know, using whatever we experience in our lives to teach us and to allow it to be there, you know, be there for us, allow it to allow me to not be heartless, but certainly not to go around crying all the time, because that's just going to get in the way, right? So you know, and really in times of difficulty, we need the clarity of our mind, and we can't have clarity of mind if we are worrying about things, if we're so in our heads and all the words are going around in our heads, like, oh my god, blah, 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 blah. I can't hear anything out there. I'm making so much noise in here that whatever is going on out there is not a part of my existence, and that is not being here for today only. So, and I can't see what's actually happening. I can't work out what to do, or so really having to understand that you know, that clarity, that emptiness is going to give me the opportunity to be able to receive and give, and be here right now for whatever I'm needed in. And that's not easy, but hey, it is a part of who we are and learning. And I feel blessed to have the system of Reiki there to support me with that.
Yeah, I mean, because life is such a journey, right? And we can't have this expectation that it's going to be perfect, or that like bad things aren't going to happen. Obviously, they are going to happen, and attachments are there because we love. You know, we love our family, we love our pets, we care for our friends for their highs and their lows, and it's a joy to witness each other's lives. I think we are given that gift in this day and age more and more, just being, you know, present to other people's lives through social media, through other ways. You know, we're more connected than we ever have been. And so it makes non-attachment hard, I think, you know. But I think, well, there's so many things I wanted to say about all of these things, but one of the things from my travels was a lot of conversation around Fudo Mayo. And he is one of the 5 wisdom kings, and he is the main wisdom king. The other 4 are guardians in the 4 directions, and he is the one who purifies us of our attachments. And so to work with Fudomayo is ultimately to work with the element fire. And one of the reasons why people used to use fire, oh, thanks, oh, great picture.
Yeah, he's right here too.
So, in Shintoism, probably more in particular, they thought that gods were in the heavens, and so why there's so much temple culture on mountains in Japan is, to get closer up towards the heavens. But the thought was that, even the mountains aren't high enough to reach the gods, so you have to use fire. Fire will bring those prayers up to the heavens. And it's very common within practices around Fudomayo is to offer something into the flame, offer something. And Shigando priest that we had a chance to listen to, he said that the process of making a wish helps you release the mundane and get a real, genuine wish. Really get to the heart of what you want. And when you can say that and really articulate what you want, that's what's most important. That's what's most important. And then the practice is to write that wish out, and you write it on these sticks and you offer it to the flame. And then by offering it, then you work with your whole heart to achieve it. And I think that speaks to the process of really recognizing, yes, there are attachments. And actually, I've studied in depth these emotions of envy and jealousy. And I think they're really, really telling, and they're so profound to work with. And if you look at a textbook definition of jealousy, it's, wanting what somebody else has, but also wanting them to have it too, right? Like you're not like, Carrie, come home now. Let's just switch out with me, and I want to be going to Karama. No, you're very happy for me. So it's ultimately a positive emotion because it's pointing you in the direction of something you really want. And as you should want, I think anybody who practices Reiki should go see the sacred sites of Reiki and go and experience what Yakutin Inomoto said, this is the Mecca of Reiki. I mean, this is the birthplace. This is the place where Reiki anchored into our planet. And there's a reason, like all of the symbology, all of the deeper meanings from the Buddhist and Shinto culture, the Japanese culture, all came together to create this healing medicine of Reiki. And it's all really important. You can't really take out one element and say, you don't need that element. It's all so important. But going back to jealousy, why it's a positive emotion is it ultimately points you in the direction of what you want. And so when you can work with what you want on a conscious level, celebrate your friends, celebrate who, whoever it is that triggering that emotion for you, then you get to you dig deeper and dig deeper and uncover what it is that you really want. And maybe even decipher what you really want. Because I remember after my divorce, I was like insanely jealous of like everybody's relationship. And I was like, oh, that relationship. And I just like couldn't even see it. Like I couldn't even look at anybody's like, kisses or holding hands or anything like that. I would just be burning inside of like anger and frustration and sadness about, losing a relationship that really mattered to me at that time. And then I realized, like, as I started to unpack that, I realized, like, in particular, I was fairly jealous of my sister's relationship and her marriage. And when I really was able to unpack it, I recognized, like, I was so happy for her. And I didn't want that kind of relationship. Like, she had this relationship that, even if I had that kind of relationship, I would have probably thought it was like smothering and I couldn't have handled it. So it taught me how to go my own path, take my own path through life. And why envy is so destructive, and envy is like, you don't want somebody to have whatever it is that they have. So you'd rather take it away from them than them having that joy.
Yeah, it's
So
like jealousy plus bitterness, right? Stir
so
them together.
yeah, I mean, so it's an interesting thing, but yeah, it's like when we can recognize and let that go, but also leave ourselves with that genuine wish and place that seeds, and then do the work to go after those dreams that we all have in life, because life is short, life is impermanent, we never know how long we're going to have. So when the time is there, and I also feel that like I'm very sensitive to that energy. So it's like even when I'm having these like kind of peak moments in my life, I recognize that might stir up those kinds of emotions for others. And it makes me kind of want to like duck down and not reach those peak moments, but that's not serving anybody else either, or supporting anybody else either. So it's about a willingness, an emotional willingness to open up to those peak experiences and go after our dreams.
Yeah.
And I feel like all of that is so Reiki, because I don't know how many times in my life I've had this intuition to just try to write it out, what is, or make a wish, or have a positive intention and like look more closely at those intentions. I think it's super helpful. And as like one more thing to what Bronwen was saying, I think when you're in a really intense emotional period in your life, like you're suffering from loss or in a state of unknown, or just dogs are missing for 12 days, if you're in your head the whole time and you're in this fear and in this anxiety of it, your mind is just going to spin in all different directions, and your intuition is not going to be clear.
That's right.
At all. So it's like you can't even, even if you had the truth somewhere inside of all of that noise, it would be so difficult to find it. So that's where the practice of Reiki can be incredibly useful, is to step out of that mindset and step into something that's deeper, which another little gem from my trip that Inamoto Sensei was sharing with us is that knowledge can lead us astray. And that might be a good thing, because it's like, follow that little bit of knowledge here, and in that process I discover my truth, but then ultimately that brings us to wisdom. Knowledge can bring us to wisdom, but they're not the same thing. And that wisdom will never lead us astray. And I think that's the intuition, the insight, the awareness, the consciousness that can come through Reiki, is a deep cellular soulful wisdom.
Yeah. There's a number of threads here that I'm going to try to pull together and tie into a nice little bow, or a jumbled up knot. We'll see. But really kind of growing out of that idea of open-heartedness that both of you have spoken to, and and the wish of one's heart's desire, right? That Furomyo helps to usher us towards by clearing out our attachments. And what it takes to get there, right? What it takes to live from that place of open-heartedness, to say, I'm gonna follow my heart's desire, even if other people have a jealous reaction, or I'm going to support my friend, even if I'm working with my feelings, or I'm going to jump into that thing that feels risky, right? Whatever open-hearted living looks like to us, how do we really get there and live there from a place that is balanced and takes into account the good of the whole, in addition to our own heart's desire. And I think the system of Reiki certainly gives us a roadmap for doing that. Of course it does, right? And I wanted to kind of lay that alongside a related system that I'm also working with. And so within the system of Reiki, we have the 3-diamond structure, and we have this pathway from our rooted, grounded place in the belly to our open, spacious, realm of possibility at the head, and then leading us to that open-hearted place of compassionate connection in the heart. And we work it in that order, right? So when we think about what does it take to be open-hearted, and we're including non-attachment in that definition, what does it take to be truly able to release our attachments to those things that we're gripping onto, probably because they help make us feel safe. They help make us feel like who we are, parts of our identity. They help us feel like we belong, like we're getting our needs met in some way. I love the way that you describe jealousy in a positive aspect. Like, what is this emotion here to do for us? And pointing us to our needs and our desires. I often say that jealousy helps to reveal our unmet needs, which is a good thing. We need to know those things. And so what do we need to get there, right? We need to first feel safe. We need to feel stable. We need to feel held. We need to feel like we've got our feet underneath us. The ground is not going to pull out from under us. We're not going to topple down. And so we work with the first diamond energy. We work with earth energy, both on the spiritual level with our Reiki practice and also in our life. What does it look like to act out, to live with, walk with earth energy, stable energy, body energy in our life? We talk about that a lot in my classes. How do we, work with the traditional practices that are first diamond oriented in our Reiki practice, and then take that into our daily life? What does working with earth energy look like in our daily life? Eating really healthy food, right? Nourishing food is an example, a way to make us feel safe and resourced. Because once we feel safe and resourced, then we can start taking a look at those attachments and say, okay, I feel safe, I feel stable, I feel resourced, I feel nourished, I have enough. Could I let go of that thing a little bit? Could I release my need to do that thing that I can't do? Could I let go of that thing from the past that I don't have anymore, right? Could I let that go a little bit? From there, then we can start to glimpse, working with second diamond energy, where once we've cleared some of that attachment out of the way, maybe Furomyo has come through and with his great fire and his great sword and helped to cut those things away. Perhaps we've worked in ritual with that energy. Then we can step into that realm of possibility. That's that realm of spaciousness in the second diamond, that place where we feel like there's more room for everything to be possible, for us to see things we hadn't seen before, to feel things we haven't felt before. And once we've brought those places into balance, then we can come into that territory of compassionate connection, that wide open hearted space. And from there, that's the place where now we're seeing the pathways of our actions and our choices that are not only good for us, but that are good for each other, that affirm and solidify our connections with each other, our connections with ourselves, with the land, with the world, with nature, and can step into a more open-hearted way of living. And all of that might take place in a very short period of time. It might be temporary. We might find ourselves right back in an unstable place in some other situation. That's okay. That's life, as you were saying, Bronwen. There's times when, we're not going to go through the work of that. We're going to just be with whatever we're feeling, and that's okay too. But again, the value of being aware of this structure and aware of these choices that we're making around where we're putting our attention and our energy. And if we kind of hold that North Star of moving towards open-heartedness and, living from the perspective of our heart's desire, then we have a really solid roadmap. And, qualifying that term heart's desire a little bit, the other system that I mentioned that I'm working with right now is working through the Book of Joy, leading a 9-week journey through the practices and perspectives that are presented in that work, documenting the dialogues between the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu around what it means to live a joyful life in the midst of all of the challenges that we have presenting to us on a regular basis. This idea that joy is actually part of the quality, the characteristics of our true self, that when we go into that Hara space, when we go into that, remembering our own wholeness, that joy is one of the aspects that we experience. That's not always explicitly named in our work with Reiki, but I think it's inherent. I think it just is true. And I love that this piece of writing and dialogue and this system of practices that are given to us through the Book of Joy really makes that explicit and gives us a roadmap. And inside of that roadmap, they outline 8 pillars of joy, 8 aspects of our self, our humanity, that uplift our access to an inherent joyful center, and 8 obstacles to joy. And the first four pillars, they take us from perspective. We have to shift our perspective, take a wider perspective, which moves us into a sense of humility, greater sense of our self and relationship to everybody else, which brings us into having a wider sense of humor about ourselves, being able to laugh at our ridiculousness a little bit. I had a good chuckle at those jealous feelings I was having, because I'm like, I don't even want to be traveling right now. Why am I feeling like that, right? I was able to laugh at myself. That's silly. What a silly thing to spend time on. And then from there, you land at acceptance. And that's the first half of those pillars. And for me, acceptance has so much to do with non-attachment, because it's so much rooted in being with what actually is true, as opposed to what I wish was true, what used to be true, what might be true, etc. And living in that place of acceptance and non-attachment is how we then shift into the next stage, which brings us right through forgiveness, through gratitude, compassion, and generosity. And that really, that formula leading us into a joyful life. And so to support all of that, the first practice that they offer in the Book of Joy is it's in its simple morning intention setting practice, and they call it the Heart's Desire practice. And it has you, go into a meditative space and ask yourself, what is my heart's desire? Allowing whatever is going to arise, but then qualifying that is, the heart, my heart's desire for me and for my family and for my community and for the world. And so kind of layering these filters, these qualifiers on that question of heart's desire, which helps us to, again, shift our perspective out from like, what might be my, oh, I want that thing, right? My heart's desire is for that thing I don't have. Like, okay, but does that serve the people I love? Does that serve the community? Does that serve the world? And once you go through that process in an honest way, then you land at the kind of heart's desire you could write down on a goma stick and throw in the fire during a fire ceremony with furomyo, and truly open your heart to receiving that heart's desire. That is a worthy heart's desire if it can pass those tests. And it's the kind of thing that if we really work with, will help us to walk through those stages of joy and live a joyful life, which is, people say, what's the meaning of life? What are we here for? Happiness is very often an answer that is given. And so I love layering these practices alongside each other, these systems of thought and philosophy that come from different places, that come from different traditions, different peoples, and see that all of them, or so many of them, pivot around some very, very universal, very similar themes. And I love this emphasis on open-heartedness and heart's desire as a particular lens through which to look at what it means to be non-attached.
Yeah, there's a lot in all of that. I think just the only thing that I have to say about any of that is that when we, you're saying like sometimes we're in that space and we think, okay, I acknowledge I'm in a space that may not be that beautiful open-heartedness, right? So you're in a grasping space. If you're in a grasping space and you have the awareness that you're in a grasping space, often that is enough to trigger a flowering of that open-heartedness, it feels to me, right? Because what happens is if we're in that grasping space, we tend not to be aware of what's going on. So working towards helping ourselves to bring awareness into our moments, all our moments, and allowing that to be the thing that can shift things, that allows the shift to happen. I don't know. That's all I was thinking about as I was listening to that. I loved all the different stages of the Book of Joy and the moving through that. And I think if you think about, that shifting, that opening, that triggering, and I'm sure that if you pulled it apart, you could find those stages within that, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And then of course, on the other side, when we look at the obstacles that are lined out in that, we see fear, we see anger, we see frustration, we see jealousy and envy, we see despair and grief. you know, these things that are so human, that are so ubiquitous, that we've all experienced in some form or another, some things more than others. You know, some things are very present. Loneliness is on the list. Loneliness is definitely something I experience it disproportionately. Some of those other elements, despair, for example, less present in my life. You know, so having a really an opportunity to do an honest assessment about, you know, what really is persistent in my life, persistently in the way of experiencing joy and persistently supportive of experiencing joy, is a really powerful place to start. Just really taking a look at the patterns of our life and the present moment. You know, what's present here for me, and you know, clearly in looking at those two sets of obstacles and joys, you know, there's 16 things on there. We have 5 precepts, but they all work together. They're all present. All of it is present in both systems. And it's just, you know, it's really affirming for me that, like, yeah, this really is the golden ticket to a happy life. These 5 precepts truly do show us the way.
Yeah, that awareness of the self. I once did a workshop. It was on Jungian dream work, and it was about going. If you looked at your dreams or you looked at other people's dreams, and you took one moment in that dream, and you started. So if I were to look at Carrie, a dream that you'd had, yeah, and then and we took one moment. And then I asked you question after question after question about that moment. And you go deeper and deeper into that moment and you know, what it feels like, where it comes from. You would find the foundation of your life. Because in any single moment of our lives, if we go deeper into whatever is going on right now, we have everything that you know, you were just saying, Michaela, about for some of us it's despair, or for some of us you would, you know, it's that it is there, it's inside there. And we don't really need to go anywhere else. We can find it here, and we can find it here to work on. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like too, my understanding of non-attachment, maybe after this trip too, is that when we're in those emotions, we are stuck too, right? Stuck. And there isn't a movement, there is not flow, there is this feeling of just being like in that, and that's life, right? Sometimes we're just stuck in emotions or in difficult circumstances. Or I think of my sister's friend whose son has cancer, and they don't know if he's going to survive, you know, and you're just stuck in that feeling, and that and the highs and lows of that, in the unknown. But when you can truly let go, then there's traction, there's movement, there's this energy taking you in that direction where you want to go. And so that's the full letting go, in my opinion. It's just like when you really like let go and just trust the flow of life, trust that your heart will take you there, trust that you're going to do and put your energy and effort, put your whole heart into whatever it is that you're, you know, aiming towards. That life gives us so many opportunities, you know, so many chances. And I never thought I would, well, I always hoped to go to Japan, but I never knew what was going to happen. And it's literally been, gosh, it's been, I want to say 16 years since I learned Reiki. So, you know, you know, there's no expiration date on our dreams. That's a lucky thing. There's no expiration date. So, and I think even our dreams take us into beautiful places beyond this one life. And yeah, so, well, I think that that's a good place to land with this conversation. It was an interesting one, kind of took us through lots of different caverns in this topic around non-attachment. We'd love to hear from you, those of us who are listening, those of you who are listening. We'd love to hear from you. What are your experiences with non-attachment? How does that relate to your Reiki practice? Has it benefited you to focus on non-attachment as something that is a part of your wheel of self-practice and self-healing? So please share your stories with us. If you feel like this episode would help somebody you know, feel free to send it along to them. And at the end of this month, no, beginning of June, actually, first week in June, I'll be leading a whole practice circle. And we'll probably weave this topic into that as well. So stay tuned. I'm sure we'll have sign up details available soon for that practice circle. And well, we just appreciate you all so very much. And thanks for being here. And we can't wait to see you next week.
We love you.